This should be played at high volume.
Welcome to High Volume. We have greatness on the show today. Professional Football Hall of Fame member, Edgerrin James. EJ, I appreciate you sitting down to talk to me because I want to start with a story about your career, the culmination of your career. I got invited to your enshrinement in Canton from Irsay, okay? And he gives me a +1. So I got the boss man's +1, and I can kind of go anywhere around that enshrinement. And I found you in the hallway, and we talked a little bit, and I hadn't seen you for a few years, and I took a couple of photos on your behalf, and then I got up on there and saw you and Peyton up there. The reason I'm telling this story is I was a kid in a candy store that day. To be able to be close with you, a friend of mine who I hadn't seen for years, but also to be able to document this with some pictures that I forwarded to you and your family. And I want to start there. I mean, inmate number 336 from the Professional Football Hall of Fame, Edgerrin James, man, that was something that I'll never forget. And I know it meant the world to you. Was that a day that you said, everything starting from Immokalee, Florida up until this point, this is all my hard work and this is what got me here?
You know, that day, that's when everything came full circle for me.
Yeah.
You know, you put in a lot of work as an athlete. There's so many young athletes that's putting in work. Everybody had the dream of even just making it to the NFL. And you have those that have a bigger dream, and that's to make it to the Hall. And I was one of those guys that always wanted to end up in the top of the top conversation. And just making it to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, that brought it all together, made all that hard work, all those long days in that 100 degrees weather, made all of it worth it. And you just reflect on those things at moments like that because it comes full circle. And, you know, some of the pictures that you sent me was from when y'all came down to the fun house.
Yeah.
And that just showing how far we've come.
Oh, man.
And how long we've been rocking and rolling, brother.
We're going to go there to Funhouse. Boy, oh, boy. I want to start in Immokalee. I mean, you know, you're the best athlete to come out of Immokalee, Florida. And was that game easy for you? Was that high school game easy for you? Because I know you had your eye on going to the University of Miami, but the game looked pretty easy for you, both at the high school and the college level. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think on all levels it was easy. You know, it just get a little more detail.
Yeah.
But, you know, football is football, and some people are made to play football. And so happened that was my calling. The ability to go out there and play football. And every game not every game, the sport as a whole was easy to me because all you had to do is outwork people. You know, you have God-given talents. You make sure you put in your work, make sure you study and get a chance to know your opponent. It just gives you that much of an edge. But as far as the game itself, it started in Part 1 of football. It was always easy for me. I've always played up. I played with the older guys always because of my size.
Yeah.
And that made it even better because once I got to the University of Miami, you know, it really opened my eyes that I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, because when you play in Part 1, it's usually against the area that you're in. And then same thing with high school, you play against the area. But when you get to college, you're playing against everybody around the country, and you're playing with them, and you get to practice with the best of the best. And once I was practicing with the best of the best, and I was like, this is the same game. It's easy, and I just made sure that I kept the same methods pretty much to always go out, work everybody. As far as toughness, I was naturally tough. You know, my mom raised a man, you know, so that was the least of my concern. But as far as putting in the work, you matching that mental toughness and going out there with the physical, and then you get up there and start studying the game. That made it all come full circle. So when I got to the pros, I was like, same game, still easy.
Peyton Manning calls you the smartest teammate he's ever had.
Peyton's the smartest teammate I ever had. So we rub off each other. But, you know, for 18, it was always, you know, studying, understanding, you know, the opponent, understanding exactly what's going on. And when you're around guys like that, you would do yourself a disservice and do the team a disservice if you don't kind of nudge them and ask questions and start, you know, taking some of that, what they're doing, and add it to your game. You know, we didn't grow up where we had to study. We just go out and play.
Yeah.
But then when you start understanding the pros, there's another level, there's another notch that you have to go if you want to be one of the best. And that's one thing that 18 did. He always prepared. And if you're around, you want to try to be on the same page with guys. It's like I'm gonna always do my part. And that was always my thing. I'm not gonna be the one that lets everybody down.
Were you always going to the University of Miami? Was that always the plan?
Well, so going back to that during those times, that's when the sanctions and all those things were about to take place for the University of Miami. So that's the only thing that had other schools on the radar. I went to visit Ohio State, and I went to the University of Florida because it was a state school. It was local, but I always wanted to go to the University of Miami, but we didn't know what was going to happen with the sanctions, with them coming down with these different rulings.
Yeah.
So that made me even venture out or even attempt to look at something. But once we got the information, it was a no-brainer. University of Miami, an hour west of Immokalee. I mean, I was from Immokalee,
Yeah.
which, me, I'm big on the family circle. So the family
sir.
got to be there. That I have to have that energy in the crowd. And University of Miami provided everything.
Well, let's be honest. We've talked about this too. Times back then were different. Bro, you go to school. You go to school now. You're signing for $3, $4, $5 million to go to school. That wasn't the case when you're coming out of Immokalee to go to Miami. What was your hustle? I'm sorry to ask, but you're a big fish in a small pond down there. And what's the hustle at that point? Because you got to make money to eat. You got to make money to take the girl out to dinner, et cetera, et cetera. What did Edgerrin do back in the day to get that hustle going?
Edge made it happen. Edge did. Edge did a lot of things that probably you wouldn't be too fond of to make it happen. I'd make it happen.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I bet it's all on the up and up.
At the end of the day, we do what it takes. You never steal from nobody. You never take from nobody. But at the same time, you do what you gotta do. I was the person that always found a way to make a dollar.
Absolutely.
And as far as taking the girl out, I wasn't really worried about the girl because I had my daughter, mom. I was becoming a parent while I'm in school, and I had to take care of my mom. So I had to take school more serious than others.
Yeah.
I had to lock in, and if I'm going to sit up there and be the head of the family,
sure,
I gotta be on my P's and Q's at all times. So I had to do what I had to do, make things happen, and stay out of trouble. I never was one to get in trouble.
You never were.
So I mean, I was pretty smooth or pretty, pretty discreet, right?
We're gonna have the movie one day.
Yeah, that's what all the stuff will come out on the movie.
But you're coming here. I mean, you did what you did. We saw 299 against UCLA. We saw what you did. First time University of Miami had 2 years in a row, 1,000 yards rusher, hasn't been broken. You're one of the greatest to play at there. And then you come up into these cornfields of Indianapolis. Bill Polian calls your name. You meet your owner, Jim Irsay. You got this quarterback named Peyton Manning there. What's your first, you're coming from Miami. Everybody's talking about you. All these fans wanted Ricky Williams, who's having a great career at University of Texas. But Edgerrin James, you're the 4th pick overall. Obviously, you're a Hall of Famer. That was the right pick. But what was your take on Indianapolis? This is a place probably you only saw at the Combine.
Yeah, I really didn't know much about Indy, but the beauty of football, it's about the game. I just wanted to play football. The city where we're at, I really didn't know much. They really didn't think of it. But I think I didn't really get a chance to really think about where I was going because the whole conversation was, why is this guy here? Or who is this guy? And so it kind of shifts your focus to saying, man, I just can't wait for them to see that I'm really the real deal. But because of my situation, because of the University of Miami, we wasn't on TV, went through those sanctions. We had limited things. A lot of people didn't know. So it was a situation where you gotta say, okay, let me just buckle down and you'll see, they'll see. And that's all the focus was. So it wasn't so much about the city because the city was great for me because I stayed on 56th Street pretty much every day at the facility. Football was my life. That's all I knew, and that's what I was up there for. It It wasn't so much as, oh, I'm in this great city, I gotta
Yeah.
be out, even though I was out all the time, but I made it work because my first commitment was to the Colts, to the
Yeah.
organization, and to make sure, like, I love to prove people wrong, and I love to make sure that the people that's pulling for me are right. And that's what that turned into. And it only took 1 year. It only took a couple
Yeah.
games.
Yeah.
It didn't even
Yeah.
take a year. It just took a little. It just took an opportunity to get on the field in front of everybody. And after that, you know, everything got quieted, and it was a non-issue since once I showed them that Bill knew what he was doing,
Yeah.
the big man knew what he was backing,
Uh-huh.
and when me and Peyton connected with Marv, we went out and did something that you're probably rarely gonna see, if you ever see it again consistently, week in and week out.
You're a young man. You're still a young man, but you know you did it right when Peyton Manning says smartest football player I ever played for. But what does it mean to you when the owner, Jim Irsay, who's a good dear friend of yours, says, I've never been closer with another player that's played for my team other than Edgerrin James. He's like family to me. Where did that come from?
It's certain things just connect and come together. It's like it wasn't something that's forced. You have just you just connect with people. You just
Mm-hmm.
connect. Sometimes it's like I was always myself, and I always went about things, the way that I feel like a man should. And a lot of people see that this is how a man's supposed to be, and it's sometimes people recognize it, but conversations, different situations, it just leads to a better relationship. Mr. Ursa, he has 3 daughters, so I would ask questions about, I got 3 daughters, so
Yeah.
you're asking questions, you're asking information that's beyond this because like the owner turns into somewhat of like a father figure in some respect to kind of give you insight, give you a little light or information, and it's just bits and pieces. And then we just connected through music, through hanging out, through being yourself, through just being cool. And Mr. Ursay, he's always being himself. He gets a chance to be who he want to be, and I'm living like that. And man, that's my buddy right there, man. The big man. You know, the big man is, and I think a lot of people, they don't really know or understand Mr. Ursa. He's rare. He's
Yeah.
very rare. And he does so much for so many people that you really don't realize the impact of him. If you think about when we're around in the environment, any environment that he's around is always positive, is always good. Everybody's, upbeat and moving. And that's the beauty of it. That says a lot about the person at the top.
Hey, I'll never forget. I was down there in Florida in 2006 with the boss man, and he met with you. And he met with you. And he had to tell you, we can't have you on the team anymore because of the way that the contracts were working out with teammates and yourself.
Yeah.
I have never talked with you publicly about that meeting. You rolled up with your friend Trick Daddy. It was about a 4-hour meeting with Jim Irsay up in his suite down in Florida. And I know it's personal, and I'm sorry to go there, but if there's something you could touch on and tell us about that meeting of 4 hours between you and Jim Irsay when he said, I love you like a son, but we've got to let you go. And you eventually moved on to the Arizona Cardinals. Could you glance over that evening for a minute?
No, the thing about it, that's what you respect about men.
Mm-hmm.
Men can sit across from each other and have conversation. And when you venture into business, you understand, like, hey, this is business. This is something that, what's best for you and what's best for the overall, we got to make sure we find a happy medium. And for me, I deserve to be compensated the right way. But due to the restrictions on the salary cap, it's cut and dry. So it wasn't really difficult. It's pretty much, it's black and white. You're gonna sit up there and put in all this work and, you know, not really value yourself because of a situation, just because you want to be here. You understand that, hey, look, this is part of the business. This is where you got these are your options. These are things that has to take place. And so it's not really a hard conversation. And those are the things, those are the things that bring people even closer because you can talk to the person. You don't have to sit back and I can never walk out saying one bad word about the organization, about the owner, the coaches, or anybody, because business is business. Ed's gonna be all right regardless. You know, Ed's coming from Markley. You're talking about I can go anywhere and make something happen. And I always got me. You know, I'm always gonna take care of me. But when you having those type of conversations, nobody has to beat around the bush. And that's the thing I always liked about Mr. Ursay. He never beat around the bush. He said, hey, this is where we at with the situation. These are the circumstances. And everything is fact, 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 fact. So you don't even have to worry about, somebody trying to just tell me something.
Yeah.
No, that's what it is. And if you have to lead a whole organization, you got to always do what's best for the organization. Not one person is bigger than the organization. And you look at any successful group, family, they've always had a nice, firm stance on what they do and what they don't do. And I'm aware of that. And so it really wasn't that big a deal for me because these are things that happens over and over in the NFL. It's like I'm not going to be the first guy and I'm not going to be the last.
Yeah.
But the relationship you build, the bond, like I don't think there'll ever be a player that has a tighter bond with Mr. Ursay than myself. And so that tells you it's bigger than the game. You know, the game brings you together, but the relationship that you build, it keeps you together.
I'll tell you what, I cut you guys a wide berth when you were here playing. When you were on the Decade of Excellence, I was doing media, still am, but I cut you guys a wide berth. I let you do your thing. But one day I passed by your locker, you remember this, hopefully, and I asked you about a book in your locker. And I keep seeing that book in your locker. And the book is Who Moved My Cheese?
Who Moved My Cheese? Spencer Johnson. That's like a once-a-year read. You got to read that once a year.
Well, I read that book. And that opened a door or a window, if you will, to you, for me, because I read that book. That book's about change. That book's about adapting with change. You know what I mean? And Peyton
100%.
talks about being smart, and you're smart. You had that thing. You were never too high, Edgerrin. You were never too low. You didn't talk a lot, but your actions did all the talking for you. And that book changed lives, not only yours, but you spread that amongst the locker room as well. If anybody asked about it, you'd say, yeah, here's what the book's about. Why don't you give it a read? I like that.
Yeah, it's a lot of times, everybody's watching. A lot of the younger guys are watching. I always knew that they were watching. And you don't get a chance to interact. Sometimes they don't know how to approach you. And the conversation may not be on the same tier when you're in a certain space, but you just sprinkle things out there. And one thing the guys knew, I was always reading. I was always studying. I was always trying to find ways to better myself, as a person and trying to, expedite the learning curve, as you get older, because we're in a room full of a lot of first-timers, first-time parents, first-time millionaires, first-time a person that's gotten his first house. And so you need somebody to lean on. So I always was that guy that people could lean on, and it's done directly or indirectly, but I'm receptive to somebody say, hey, what book is that? What are you reading? How do you know this? How do you know that? It's like, I'm not like some guys are too tough, or they probably think it's not cool enough, but it's like me, I take all that stuff out of the way. Look, I know I'm cool. I'm not worried about that. But I'm going to do the things that you need to do to make sure you can keep your cool in whatever situation, whatever environment.
Well, you've proven that. And you talk about change. And if I could, we can stop. We don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, but tragedy struck during your career when you lost your partner, Andia, to like a leukemia, if memory serves. A blood cancer, and you lost your partner, Edgerrin, and you're playing football at that time, and you've got a family, and she's the mother of your children. That period of your life and still producing, how tough was that for you, and what sort of reserve did you have to dig deep? Because that's a tragedy no one's expecting.
Yeah, it's one of those things, life happens. You have to treat life as it is, not as you want it to be. Mm-hmm. And when things happen, you have to make proper adjustments. And you can be tough. You can be somebody say, "Oh, this don't bother me." But when you look at it, you start thinking about, before I had to, just get up and think about football. Now I got to get up and think about those children that I'm playing football, but I'm away from. I got to think about somebody else taking care of my responsibility. And you got to think about, oh, I don't have time. Like I used to have more time to put in workouts and do all the extra stuff. But it comes a point where that time gets limited. And so it starts to affect the play and affects the things that you do in your process and the way you approach the game. And it also kind of puts you in a situation where you start thinking about what's important, like what's important in life. So for myself, it's like I've always wanted to keep climbing that Russian ladder. And I'm looking at the Russian ladder, I'm like, I'm right there. I'm right there. You know, I'm about to pass this person, I'm about to pass that person. And it was always a goal of mine. But then you start thinking about, is it really that important now? You know, it really don't matter, you know, because physically I was still able to play. I still could have probably played 2 more years or something.
Yeah.
You know, I could have climbed that ladder. But am I doing the proper things that it takes to be one of the best football players? Am I taking away a spot on this team? Because it could be a younger guy that needs this position, that wants this opportunity. And for myself, all those things go through your mind. Okay, do you continue? So I make a decision, say, man, you know what? The game, I did enough. You know, if I get in the hall, I get in the hall. I don't, I don't. You know, it's like, because I'm going to go do the right thing. The right thing is to go be with those children, go be around those children, because you get that small window. And you want to make sure that you connect with your children as much as you can. And I think a lot of ball players struggle with that. You know, if you've been away from the kids so long, you don't really get to know your kid, because somebody financially, okay, they're going to be okay. But it's the things that money can't do that builds the relationship with you and your children.
Yeah.
And that's where I had to make a decision. Say, you know what, I'm gonna shut this thing down. You know, I'm not really into it, because I know what it takes to be a pro. I know what it takes to be one of the best to play. And if I'm cheating the game due to my personal things, I need to remove myself from there. And that's what I did. As bad as I wanted to pass up all those people, because I'm like, man, I'm only a couple yards away from this person, or a couple yards from that person. That's nothing. I can sit there and do this. But then what's more important, man? You know, what's more important? And the good thing is I had did enough work on the field to where I still get the call from the Hall of Fame. You know, you wanted it sooner, and I wanted to go up more. I wanted to be to where I'm in the top 5, top 6. I'm right up in there, you know. But when I finished, I was at 10 or 11, and I'm like, man, I'm good. You know, at some point, I'll get in there, and it'll happen, because my body of work speaks for itself.
For sure.
And it worked out.
Well, I'll tell you what, I want to find out about your kids now and Immokalee, because you were nice enough. We didn't know each other very well, but you invited me down in 2003, 2004 to do a piece on you in the offseason and training. We saw the fun house there that you built down there. First off, have your kids, do they know your upbringing, what Immokalee was or is, and when you were coming up and how it is now? Because you know, their father's a multi-millionaire, Hall of Fame running back and stuff like that. They didn't know that Immokalee, Edgerrin James. Is that something that you transition into their lives to say, hey, this is where Dad grew up? It's a little bit different than where you guys are at now.
Well, I think it's all part of it. You know, in the early years, they used to be there a lot more. They used to be around, because that was what I was connected to. And we try to make sure we do a lot in the community, make sure we're around, we're visible.
For sure.
But as they continue to grow and flourish, you know, you start thinking about the situation surrounding, and we wanted to put them in better environments. You know, Immokalee is good for a person that's in certain situations, but as you graduate from those situations, now it's time to elevate. You would be a fool to say, okay, we kind of made it out. We've kind of, you know, put ourselves in position, and we just stay in this one space. Life is about elevating. You got to keep growing. So I want to make sure I put them in the right situations, and they're not too far away from understanding what it's like to be in a Immokalee. They're familiar with it. They know everybody around there. But for them, they live in totally different. So it's a different world. Like their relationship with their classmates is totally different from with myself, because they're coming from what we consider a spoon-fed situation, or they got everything given to them. And that really don't mesh a lot well in certain situations, because sometimes you get picked on by that, or you get frowned upon because of those situations. So as a parent, you have to make sure that you understanding what they have to go through and what they're like is. You can't make them be you and see things the way you've seen it, because when I was in school, nobody had. We had money. We didn't have. I mean, we didn't have money. Nobody had money,
Right.
and we all clicked up because if you ain't got shit and I ain't got shit, guess what? Ain't
Yeah.
nobody tripping, right? So, and that's just the way it is. That's just the way the world is, and trying to be mindful of those things. That's what parenting is, because I'm like, hey, this is totally different. I'm not gonna have somebody juicing my kids or
Yeah,
sit up
right.
there, like playing on my kids just for to be their friend. They got to be in situations that are like-minded.
Hey, a couple of your kids, just off the top of my head, we got a doctor there. We got a professional basketball player one day going to be coming up. We got an entertainer in there. The James kids are doing a lot, and they're following in their dad's footsteps. So congrats on that.
I appreciate it, man. It's and a lot of these things start right in that locker room. I remember
Yeah,
I was in there. We had the trainer by the name of Hunter Smith. You remember Hunter
yeah,
Smith?
sure, very
Hunt.
well.
So Hunt had 3 kids. Hunt had 3 kids, and he was like, and then all of them graduated, right? And I was like, man, that's super cool, because I'm coming from a place where everybody don't graduate. Some people go to college one off. If you go to college, you're special. You did it. And I was like, man, landing out, and I spent a lot of time in the training room. That was my hangout. And I was like, he's 3 for 3. I'm like, damn, you got 3 boys, all 3 of them in college. They got degrees. And I was like, Hot, I'm gonna go. I said, I'm gonna make sure every kid that I have gonna go to finish college. So I'm
Oh
almost
man.
there. I'm gonna make sure they go to college. So he was 3 for 3. I'm gonna be 6 for 6.
Yes, you are.
I'm going
Yep.
for the last. The last one had just agreed to go to the University of Cincinnati where his brother's at. So
Yeah, good.
that's gonna bring it home. That'll bring it all the way home.
Keep your eye on Jizzle. That kid is talented, among others, in the James family. Listen, I appreciate you sitting for the time. Couple of questions for you. How many receptions do you think you have in your NFL career? Do you know that off the top of your head?
Nah, the stats I really don't know. But when you go to these when you go to these signings, you
Yeah.
kind of get reminded of those things. So they always bring something to you that says, "Can you put this on a helmet or something like that?" So, but I don't really know off the top of my head.
Bro, you had 433 receptions in your NFL career. I would have
Man,
said
that's a
half of
wide
that.
receiver. I could have been a wide receiver.
433 for 3,365 yards through the air. Not only a runner, but you could catch the ball as well. I just want to give you some love on this. When I'm serious. I talk about this to this day. The most beautiful NFL running back run that I've ever seen is by you. In 2004 against the Bears, I think you finished with 201 or 209, but you had a 35-yard run. If you remember, I know you know this, Edgerrin.
Yeah, I see. I remember. I always get shown that run.
You did. You got the ball, quick spin. Another guy in your face, quick spin. Slant left, slant right, go forward for another 10 yards. The reason I love that run is because that's your way of running the football. That is it. Whatever it takes, you weren't like Dickerson, you running high, you ran more low. Your style was beautiful because you waited just enough in the holes to find out where you were going. And that run right there, that 35-yard run, folks, you can look it up. The most beautiful NFL rushing run ever is by Edgerrin James. That's why I love you, big man, because I'm telling you, it's just beauty in watching it. And that was the way that you brought it to the game. No wonder you're a Pro Football Hall of Famer. I sound like a fanboy right now, but it's something I've always talked to.
You my boy. You my boy, man. We connected.
I know, but in the 20 years. Anyway, I just wanted to say that. That one to me is always special, so I appreciate that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm glad we got to know each other a little bit better after your career because, like I said, I cut you a wide berth. Finally, the camaraderie, the fellowship, and the brotherhood, all those guys are still close to you on your phone. I don't care, Gary Brackett, Tarek Glenn, Ryan Deem, it doesn't matter who we're talking about, Peyton Manning, all those guys are all connected. And your relationship with those guys, what's it like now? How much do you talk throughout the year?
Well, it's all situational. The one thing that's great about the Colts organization is, they bring everybody together, and that kind of keeps the bond, even closer. Like Dallas. Dallas Clark had his Ring of Honor, and all the guys were able to get together, and you get to relive those moments, those years. And so those are the situations that happen where things that come up to where there may be an event, but even if you're in a certain city or something and you know somebody, you reach out to them and everybody just kind of comes out and celebrate or supports whatever you have going. And I've always connected with the guys. I've always been cool with the guys and stay in touch with a lot of them, over the years because you're going to cross paths in different situations. I'm actually going to Iowa this year to go see Dallas.
Okay.
Edge and Iowa. Oh man.
I can't wait. You'll find that hookah club somewhere. I'm sure, right?
I'm gonna find something.
Hey, I'm gonna let you go, but one of the things that I remember Jim Irsay saying when the Colts ownership was giving out their Super Bowl rings, even before that day that they celebrated downtown here in Indianapolis, I remember the day that he said, "My man Edgerrin is getting one of these, one of the first ones, because he is a foundational piece. We're not here without Edgerrin James." That's a special moment coming from an NFL owner. And I know we've talked about Jim Irsay, but when you got that call or when you opened that package and you saw your name on an Indianapolis Colts Super Bowl ring on a team that you didn't play for, but you gave your life and your blood 10 years for prior to that, what did that mean to you?
I mean, it means a lot. It says a lot about the organization. It says a lot about Mr. Irsay.
Mm-hmm.
And then it speaks on the impact that your work didn't go unnoticed. Those things right there all come together. And like, I felt like I was a part of the team anyway. I was just like, I'm on IR. I'm out in Arizona. I'm on IR. Because, the relationship with the guys, it's like no matter what, you don't stop talking to the guys. You don't stop, having those conversations.
Yeah.
It's one of those situations where, once you become part of a family, it's hard to detach that bond. And then when I didn't know Joseph Badai from nothing, I made sure I reached out to him and I made sure to let him know anything you need to know to help this team, help this organization, and to help you become a better football player, especially in this offense, because I know this offense. I can help you as much as possible. There's an open book, and we build a relationship from there. So it's the little things that you do behind the scenes that says this is important to me. It's important to me that the Colts be successful. It's important to me that all these guys become successful because it's bigger than football with me. It's about life. When I cross paths with people, I always want to leave people in a better place than I found them. I'm here to do my part. Life's too easy for me. I don't have to be selfish. The man up top takes care of the edge so well that, hey, I'm so secure in whatever position I'm in, I have no worries. So it's easy for me to reach back, help, support, and when the Colts came down for the Super Bowl, I was right there with the guys.
Yeah.
Doing everything I can do to help and especially embracing the Reg, my boy. Yeah. You come back to Miami, man, you want to see everybody have success. I want to see them win. And that's the difference in men and little boys. I'm a grown man. I'm a man about everything. And when the conversation with me and Mr. Irsay had the conversation and we sat down and we talked, it's two men talking. It's two men talking, and there's an understanding. Because if there wasn't an understanding, you walk out of there mad, miserable, and then you're not supportive. You're not supportive of what's going on or what's taking place. But this is real. And Edge always been real and gonna remain real.
Bro, I've been to a lot of events with you after you ended your career, and I've seen the people's faces, and I see what the temperature of the room does when you walk into it. You're a special cat, Edgerrin James, a very special cat. And I appreciate you sitting down and talking to us. We're going to do it some more. I'm going to see you up at camp. Obviously, we see you out at a lot of Colts functions and everything. We got a big quarterback competition coming up. And let's talk again, come around training camp time and see what you've been up to. And I will tell everybody listening and watching out there, follow this man on IG. His stories are incredible. You never know where he's going to pop up in the world, but you and your crew are there. So if you want a good follow, go to Instagram and follow Edgerrin James. I appreciate your time today, EJ.
Man, thank you. I appreciate you. You already know I'm one phone call away, and I'll be seeing you soon in person.
That's right. You mean a lot to me, and I appreciate the time today. And thank you all for watching. This is High Volume, the greatest to ever wear a horseshoe at the running back position. His name is Edgerrin James. I appreciate you guys watching. Everyone on YouTube, I appreciate you guys, as well as the Colts Audio Network. Hey, we'll do it every week, week in and week out. Sometimes we bring in Pro Football Hall of Famers, sometimes we don't, but the stories are always good. Thank you, Edgerrin James. We'll see you next week.
This should be played at high volume.